Hi, it's me, your boyfriend slash girlfriend slash day friend's favorite content creator, and I am going to do a bit of a rant. This is not a video game one, as you can tell by the title and or thumbnail, but I had to get this out. Why do they keep giving Zack Snyder money? Like, why? Why? I have seen parts 1 and 2, and probably the last of the series, of the Rebel Moon series, and when I tell you, this series is like the most boring shit you'll ever watch. I truly mean it. If you have ever seen a movie, if you've seen Star Wars, if you've seen Magnificent Seven, or anything that's been an homage to Kurosawa, you've seen this movie. It does everything the same, and then the parts that it does originally suck. So I won't even talk about the first one because it's about the second one, but even though they're more or less the same movie. But the whole gist is there is an evil empire out to take out this moon called Velt, this village on the moon called Velt, and the whole thing is this big interstellar empire with supposedly magical, I don't know, some magic involved with some shit. It's like the Force, but not really the Force. And they are so fixated on getting grain. And grain isn't like spice. It's not like Doom where it actually means something else. No, grain like the shit you use to make bread and stuff, that kind of grain. They need that to feed their troops. Mind you, these are people who can travel interstellar distances, who can bring someone back from the dead, but they haven't found a way to feed people that hasn't relied on agriculture from literally like the beginning of humanity. And so in the second movie, they're coming back to the planet to get their grain, but also get the Scargiver. It's called Scargiver, by the way, and who's the main character. And on the main character side, the hero side of things, they have to, never guess this, but they're going to have to help the villagers defend from the big bad empire by teaching them how to fight. And the teaching them how to fight part is so glossed over. Everyone's a genius when it comes to fighting. I'm not exaggerating. They pick up a gun, they'll headshot you from 100 yards out. They can cut through you like butter. Like, they are farmers who apparently have like the latent ability to just pick up a weapon and know how to use it. I was at a loss the entire film, because from when they return to when the bad guys show up is 5 days, a work week. And within a work week, they have apparently bonded with these villagers to such an insane degree that the villagers are making like names for them and have little fucking like symbols for them and all this other stuff. They're integral to the village. That's one of the problems this movie's had from both films. They do not build on any relationship. There's no relationships that actually seem natural. Literally at one part in the movie, two main people, or sorry, two of the heroes, the guy who never had the shirt on and like the girl who's not the Scargiver, who's from like the rebel army, have a moment, and I'm just like, was this hinted at all? Like, he's talking about how he thought he wanted to die, but he doesn't actually want to die. But if he has to die, they'll die together. And they kind of have that look like you would give a lover who knows the end is near. And I'm just like, when was this even hinted at? The only people in a relationship are the tall guy who was once Dario from, actually both of them were Dario in Game of Thrones. It's weird, but it's him, the second one, I guess, and the one who isn't Ed Screen, and Sophia's character, Arthella, the Scargiver. Those are the only ones in a relationship, and yet this entire movie wants you to think that these guys have been bonded together for years, and they are blood brothers, and it's like they've known each other, including in the first movie, like a week. Like, it's been a week, give or take. Like, not that much time has passed. But within that time period, so much has happened. And I'm like, does Zack Snyder not know how days or relationships work? Like, is it something different? Maybe a week in his universe is like 6 months in real time? Because the way that they act around each other is so weird. Because at one point, they know nothing about each other, so they literally sit down at a table and go over each other's backstory. I mean that. Like, they stop the movie, which, to be honest, not much is even happening. Sit at the table. General Titus, Jimon Honsu's character, starts it off. And he goes, here's my backstory. Now you do your flashback. Now you do your flashback, Nemesis. Now you do your flashback. And it's because they never established anything in the first movie. So they had to do catch up to give you the emotional weight. And real quick, by the way, this is rambly, I'm sorry, but I'm going to do spoilers too. Nemesis. Nemesis is one of, I would say, 2 interesting characters they have in that entire movie. The other one being General Titus. And her whole story was that the Empire killed her. I'm gonna say Empire, I don't care what they're called. The Empire killed her family, her children. So she made it her life's mission to become like their nemesis. Just or from the Greek standpoint, the physical embodiment of revenge, right? She became a tool for carnage. And I'm like, it's a pretty cool, interesting point to be like, hey, here's a hero you don't often see much in media, right? Like a grieving mother who's older and is kicking the shit out of these guys, right? And so you think you're gonna get more of that this movie, and they're queuing up like, oh, she's at a village. There's a little boy who has an interest in her, like he could be like her son's age. It's like, oh, she gets to reconnect and be a mother, and we're gonna see something pay off. And then she fucking dies to some random person protecting the villagers, just out of nowhere. Like, I mean, like, this guy doesn't even have a name. And she's Nemesis. She's built up as being this like badass warrior woman. In the first movie, she takes out another mother, but like a huge spider lady. And it's supposed to be like her introduction moment. And she takes out a huge spider lady and then gets killed by a guy. And then the kid is like, no, not Nemesis or whatever. And it's like, you guys did like the stolen glances thing, but there was, again, no connective tissue. It's just like Zack Snyder just has these ideas and has no idea how to actually connect them, but just wants them on screen. Here's the scene where they're fighting on this ship, and then they go to the engine room, and it's like a woman's face is a statue, but it's actually the engine. What does this mean? Oh, I don't fucking know. It was just a cool scene. And then at the end of the movie, when she's fighting against the main bad guy, I think it's General Noble or something like that, Commander Noble, it's almost a rehash of the exact same thing that happened in the first movie. Them two fighting near a destroyed ship, and all this just falling around and going around, and then he ends up losing. And then in this version, instead of fighting near a destroyed ship, they are on the ship that's being destroyed. And yeah, he loses again. But this time he dies for realsies, because out of nowhere, her boyfriend stabs him in the back, and then they like trap him in the door and cut his head off. And I was like, so what the fuck was the point of bringing him back in the first place? He just dies again in a more pitiful way. And at the very end of the movie, they're just talking about how I lied to you guys. And then Zero Hunter's like, yeah, we know. I know you're the Scargiver. We know who you are. And then she's like, you know that and then there's the whole spiel. You know I'm Archelaus, the adopted daughter of Belisarius, who was the main bad dude, and I assassinated the princess. And he's like, I know those things, but you didn't assassinate the princess. Go find her. You have reason to fight. You have reason to go find her. And then everyone's like, and I'll help you too. And I'm like, why? One of you guys, the guy who said he didn't want to die, he said after he survives this, he wants to go back home to his planet where he was, you know, a prince and like, I don't know, rule. And now he's like, nah, fuck it. I'll go with you. The person who's part of the rebel army, she's like, I'll go with you. Everyone's like, we'll go with you. And I'm just like, okay, Jimon Honsu, but like, you're telling her to go find this person that she's alive. So you knew this whole time? Like, why didn't you go find this person? Because in like the first movie, he was all dejected because his men got killed. And then he becomes drunk and fights in this arena. And I'm like, why weren't you looking for the princess the entire time? Like, why not? It just doesn't make any goddamn sense. Oh, and also, once again, Jimmy the Robot, played by Anthony Hopkins, shows up for like 5 minutes again, but actually does something. But he has a weird scene where he like lands Superman style, wearing a cape, and everyone just stops. And I'm just like, okay, I do remember in the first movie they mentioned how these guys were deadly, but because they mentioned these guys were deadly, why would you stop? Keep fucking shooting. It'd be one thing if he would land on like the tank they're going against and destroy that first, and I'm like, oh, holy shit. But he just like lands between the encroaching army and the good guys. which is just 2 of them, and just lands right there. And then he just starts taking out everyone. And I'm like, what? You wait this long, and then he just leaves again. And then he shows up in the movie, and he's just like, I will go with you too, because I'm programmed to protect the lineage of the king. And I'm like, there's so much word salad that happens in this movie with no reference to anything. You don't give a shit about anything. You talk about how they were, the bad guys were in the orbit of like Vendela 7, or who gives a shit, who cares? Because you only stay on one planet this movie. Just Velt, just the village, that's it. Village and the ship and the atmosphere, that's it. They'll throw out all these terminologies, whatever, but nothing happens. And then it's just like, okay, they keep destroying the Empire, and I'm like, how are you guys a threat? How are they a threat? And I guess it's also implied, maybe I should rewatch the first one, but like, Scargiver, she's like the most badassest woman to ever exist, but also the most badass member of the military, to the point where she's the only woman that we've ever seen in the military, which is weird because this universe also has like the Blood Axe twins, who are like a brother and sister combo, and they have men and women in their army, and like other people had men and women in their armies, but like these guys don't. And I'm like, are they trying to tell us something? I don't know. And one more thing. This is the best part. Beginning of the movie, she has to keep telling her backstory, because again, Zack Snyder doesn't know how to weave that into a narrative. So she's telling the guy she's sleeping with her backstory. Again, mind you, she had told him backstory previously when they were at a campfire, and he just asked a follow-up question, something like, you don't be branded the world's most, like, or the universe's most intense criminal from just defecting. And then she gets into detail how she killed the princess. But during that scene, Belisarius and the king are all in the same room, and there's these guys who have like these like Amadeus fucking symbol bags over their heads, and they're a choir. I'm sorry, not choir. They are a orchestral group. They're playing music, right? And so they're playing music, just eyes covered, playing music, while they're reenacting basically the Ides of March there / the Red Wedding, and they have all these sinners take out knives and try to kill the king, right? And they're just playing music, and it's not like, oh, the background, but no, they're live action, like literally playing music. There's a soundtrack happening while there's a murder going on. And then after he stabs the king, Belsar stabs the king, king's still dead, he orders Archelaus, who's the Scargiver, to shoot the to shoot the princess. And what follows is like the worst line delivery, but then also when she does do it, immediately he's like, what did you do? What did you do?
What are you waiting for, child? Do it! Do it. No. Do it. Kill her.
Murder. And then all the students were like, murder, kill her. And I'm like, I don't understand the plan here.
Shoot her!
There she is, gentlemen. The assassin of the royal family. An off-worlder. A cancer of ethnic impurity.
Murderer!
Because it feels like you wanted to set her up to be the killer, right? But instead of it being like, he sends her to assassinate the princess and then also sends his guards to discover it, it's a coup. They're all in on it, but then they need to blame it on her, when they could have just said literally anything. Anything could have happened, because everyone who knows better is either dead or on your team. Like, why pin it on her? They could have just said it was simply an accident. They could have said they were killed by one of their enemies and use that to further propagate the war. Like, so many things. Because the reason why they wanted to kill the princess was because she was going to dismantle their war machine. What better way to keep your war machine going than saying the people she was going to meet with, or, the kingdom that they were going to, assassinated her. That way you can destroy them and then continue your rampage. Like, I don't understand. And that's just the whole movie. You're watching, you're like, big, huge interstellar ships go off coal power. There's people throwing a furnace. There's little coal into a furnace to power up a machine that there's no fucking way that would work. If they had like a fusion reactor core, sure, that makes perfect sense. This shit that like you would see on a train from like the 1800s, like a stagecoach, that's powering your ship. Impossible. I don't get it. Nothing in the universe makes sense. There's no connective tissue. There's not even like good world building, just a bunch of ideas thrown out in the atmosphere, and it's supposed to look like deep lore. But and I'm not the guy who needs everything explained. That's not how the real world works. But even the most basics of shit doesn't make any sense. They have their own version of laser swords. Nemesis cuts off her arms in order to put on prosthetic arms to wield the laser swords. And then everyone else with laser swords just has like a glove. And my whole thing was like, Nemesis, why don't you use a glove? But also, how do you have technology to have these superheated, like lasery swords, but then you don't have technology to have like a handle that either dissipates heat effectively so it doesn't burn you? You know what I mean? Like, what's the point of that? Like, it doesn't even, I don't, they have laser guns. They have laser guns. They have fucking laser guns. And yet, they still need this. I don't get it, man. It's like he's trying to do old West Star Wars and make it gritty, but there's no sense behind it, like at all. And the people who have the laser swords, it's not even special. Because in Star Wars, if you had a lightsaber, you were a Jedi, or you knew a Jedi, or you were a Force sensitive or something. It symbolized something, right? In this universe, anyone can have a fucking laser sword. Like, I thought Nemesis having one meant like she was like secretly like a retired killer. She even goes so far as to say her people were like not always peaceful, but then also says the blood of her ancestors taught her how to fight. So I don't know, if that's true or if it's just like hyperbole. But this whole movie makes no sense. There's nothing satisfying about this movie. It's just shit happens, random, pointless deaths, and then they move on to it. Again, another spoiler. Scargiver's boyfriend dies at the end of the movie. He gets wounded, I think, when they're falling, I don't know, and he dies. And then they just like, boop, next scene, burning bodies, and we're gonna tease for next movie. That's it. Nemesis dies, boop, next scene. Not even her family is like mourning her. It's just doing the whole generic, like, bodies are burning on the pyre, but no speech about her, nothing to make her stand out. These people who are supposed to be a found family, what they're going for, it's like, well, you know, they're dead, who cares? Who gives a shit? Which I feel like that's just the whole point of the movie. Who gives a shit? Because Zack Snyder is just going to do another one of his, oh, well, the real version is the R version. That's how I really wanted to be released. Then why didn't you release it that way, Zack Snyder? It's a Netflix movie. You could have released rated R movies on Netflix. It's okay. Why are you releasing a PG-13 movie and then want to release an R-rated movie in the summer? Just release the fucking movie. Like, I'm tired. Tired of this. Oh my God. And listen, you're talking to a guy who loves trash movies. I watch Catwoman regularly, yearly. I also unironically love the Twilight series because those films are some of the most peak trash you will ever watch. There's always something going on. You'll never get bored. This shit was so boring that I literally skipped parts because I knew what was going to happen. I knew he was going to die because they started giving him his little speech. I just skipped the part where he fucking died, which is like 3 scenes later. Like, you could literally guess the dialogue of this movie. You could guess the entire trajectory of this movie, and you would be wrong. There's nothing surprising in this movie. Like, there's nothing surprising in this movie, except for how bland and boring it is. Please stop doing this. Everyone's like, oh, he wanted to direct Star Wars. Thank God he didn't. Thank God he didn't. Or the gods, or whatever the fuck the religion is in this movie. Nothing makes sense is what I'm trying to tell you.